thank you for joining. Welcome to the release webinar of MCCP FastTrack, major release 112 that we released yesterday. So we'll walk you through the main enhancements and impact on configuration. And if you have questions, please raise them in the chat so we can address them. Also, if you could mute your lines, that would be great. Yes, thanks, Jeroen. Okay. So the objective of the major release, what's included, and what does it mean for your configuration, your org? So the main objective of this webinar is to give you a detailed explanation of what's new in this release, and there's a lot. We're very excited about the new features, and we look forward to your feedback on it as well. So we'll include info on the feature, why we introduced it in this release, and the configuration impact. So let's start with the biggest impact for the end user. We redesigned the pages for adding targets. So we have a new user interface for the end users, whether that's a local admin or a key user or a rep adding targets and goals through the app. The page will look different, improved workflow. We also support now setting different goals for channels and products on the same page, meaning for a single segment, you can add products, goals, channel goals, and targets all together, and we'll talk about that in more detail. We also introduce a template library. So any filter criteria and goals you want to set for a segment, for example, you can save it as a template. And that template is available both on the set standard goals for mass assigning and on the add new target on the individual cycle plan. And we also introduce a feature to skip all duplicates, and we'll get into more detail on that. So first point, improved user interface. We now have a page where if you want to add targets and goals, you do it in exactly that order. So previously, we first set the goals and then filtered the targets. We got feedback that from a user perspective, this was not so logical. So we changed the page layout. So basically, you first filter your accounts using the different filters available to you, custom filters, product metrics filters, account lists, etc. Once you've reached your target group through the search, you can then set your goals across the channels and products. So this is just a more logical flow. First, you define the targets, then you set the goals. We also introduce a feature where you can basically show only the favorite filters and collapse others, especially if you have, for example, 10, 12 filters on the page. It's quite a lot, and maybe not all the filters are used that often or that important. So from a configuration standpoint, you can identify which filters should be presented as favorites. They will show on the page, and which should be available once the user clicks more. So they're always available, but not presented on the page straight away. They're either shown or collapsed. And we introduced the same for account lists and my account views. So because basically this was taking a lot of space on the page, we now allow the user to basically open up the section and choose the account list to use as a filter, or choose the view to use as a filter. So again, this is to improve the user experience. It's more user friendly. It's a more condensed page where the business basically can focus on what's the most important filter to use to get to your list of targets, but still have the other options available. Then something that we are quite excited about, on the same page, we can now also set goals for multiple channels and multiple products. We could do that before, but you would set one goal for all the channels, for example. It would be the same, which doesn't make any sense, because you may want to set a goal of 5 for face-to-face or remote meetings, but you may want to set a goal of 8 for approved email. So with the new release, you can do exactly that. You can set different goals across the channels and across the products, all on the same page, which has significant improvements for the user, because it saves even more time, where in the past, in the previous release, you would have to basically, for a segment A, for example, you would set your goals for the channel visit and the associated products. Then you would run the same again, but on the channel approved email. So for segment A, first the channel visit, then the channel approved email. So you basically have to do the same exercise twice for a single segment. Now for segment A, you can set all the goals in one go, and then you can focus on segment B. So this saves a lot of time. You don't have to do the same over and over again for the same segment, but you can really focus on each segment and set the goals and the targets for that segment. And of course, like before, whatever is set as a preset goal, you can always change it in the view edit page. And when you set your filter criteria and you set your goals across the channels and the products, knowing that you will probably use these criteria more than once, we now allow to save it as a template. So both the filter criteria and the goals for the channels and the products, you can save it as a template and reuse that later. And you can reuse it both on the set standard goals page and on the add new target page on the individual cycle plan. Meaning if you want to add, for example, targets and goals for cycle 2, you can reuse the template from cycle 1 and just load the criteria and the goals and run the search and save, and you're done. So again, this saves a lot of time, and also it reduces the risk of error, because you set up the template once and you can just reuse it or fine-tune it for another segment, share that with the business, and basically when, for example, reps, like one of the customers in France, the reps actually build the cycle plans, they add the targets and the goals. So this template could be made available to them, so they only have to apply it and then fine-tune on the individual level. So there's, again, significant time savings and also reducing risk of error, because you can run from a template that you saved before. And of course, the skip all has been requested as an important new feature, especially when you want to add targets and goals to a cycle plan. Previously, to avoid duplicates, we would allow to skip the duplicates, but sometimes that meant a lot of skipping. So basically, we now support the skip all function, both in set standard goals and in add new target. And we'll address this again when we get to the cloning improvements, because there's a relationship with cloning to very easily update for a new cycle all the targets and goals. And especially then the skip all function is quite important. The business justification, besides time savings, is definitely the clone. We'll get to that. So I'll just park it for now. So about the changes to the page redesign, user interface, setting goals for multiple channels and products, the template library. Any questions on that we could address here? I will show you in our sandbox, of course, just to check if there's any question.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Good. I'll share my Veeva page. All right, so just checking if you can see our sandbox.
Yes, we can.
Good. So we talked about new user interface. So for example, let me go to set standard goals. How that looks like when you use the app. So in set standard goals, basically what you do is for a cycle with the associated channels and goals, we set channels and products, sorry, we set goals and targets. So we start always with selecting the cycle that we're working on. With this release, now you can select all the channels in one go. You don't have to focus on each of the individual channels because you can set the goals across the channels in one go. So I select all my channels, I select all my products. And in my example, I have 5 cycle plans associated. I select all. So now I can start focusing on getting to my list of targets and assigning the goals. So here on the new user interface, you will see a few sections and you will see the More button. So let's imagine you have 10 custom filters defined. You could set like 3 or 4, whatever meets the business need as favorites, and they would be shown here. And other filters would be hidden and available through the More button, allowing the business to focus on what's most important. And the same for the product metrics. If you have favorite filters that you prefer the business to work from or want to let them focus on, they will be available by default. And if you click more, you will have additional filters available. So, of course, the account lists, and we'll get to that. And so this is basically the section for filtering your accounts to get to that target list. And then we set goals. So because we selected all the channels and all the products, we can now enter values across the channels and across the products. So let's do that. For example, just entering some numbers here. And you can really play with that to basically set goals for this segment. Let's assume it's a segment A. You want face-to-face visits to have a goal of 5, but no more than 10, etc. You can set your product goals as well. Just entering some random numbers. So previously, you would have to do this every time again for each of the channels. Now you don't. You can set the goals across the channels, across the products, and really get those individual goals per channel. Let's also select some of my filters, set some filter criteria. For example, focusing on specialty oncology. It's just a random example. And focusing on product metrics for Colacap segment guard, might be in your case ABC, or how you define your segments. If I run the search, I just want to check the number of accounts that meet these criteria. So basically what I now did is I set filter criteria, I set goals across the channels and products. I can now save that as a template. So let's do that. I'm going to save these settings for later use. And let's give it a name. And so you see, when I save this template, I can change the name. It's saving all my filter criteria, and it's saving all my goals set across the channels. And I can also control visibility of this template. So either it's just for my use, or I can make it available to all users, or I can make it available to users with a certain profile. Works the same as other features in Salesforce. So you could decide who should have access to this template, but let's set it to accessible to all users, save it. Now I can reuse this template on another occasion. So imagine this wasn't here. Let's just start over and show you how to load the template. I want to now, set standard goals again for this cycle. I select my cycle. One. Yes, all my channels. All my products. All my cycle plans. And now I decide to load a filter template. This is all empty. I select my template from the library. And first you see it's just select the one I just created, or let's take another one. So it's here presenting me the filter criteria I had saved. We separated it into two. So first we load the selected filter criteria. This will populate all your filters. Right. Cardiology, Restolar, segment grow. And next we load the goals. And it will populate the goals for the channels and the products. And we can save it. So this is very handy, saves a lot of time if you have to do goal setting across segments, and if you want to reuse your settings, your business criteria basically, for later cycles, you can simply save as a template and then load the template. And just as a reminder, what then happens if we save these settings, it's going to create targets for all the accounts that meet these criteria with these goals set for the channels and the products. And it's going to distribute those accounts, those targets across the cycle plans based on a match on the territory or on the TSF or on the TSF MyTarget, depending on the customer configuration. So it will check which target should go to which cycle plan, and it will assign the goals that we have defined here. And so basically that's covering both the change in user interface. First we focus on targets, then we set goals. It covers the templates, and it covers the setting goals across channels and products on a single page. Any questions on that?
I'm not a question. I'm impressed about the performance you're showing here as well. I know it's a demo, but still, I think you did a great job in browsing through those pages, selecting all the templates. There's quite a few data behind this and logic, so well done.
Yeah, it's in the back. It's quite a complex process, also for set standard goals, because there's a lot of data being created. But we did quite some enhancements on the performance, so it's quite quick. And this, of course, is sandbox. But in feedback has been good. This will even make it more fun to prepare cycle plans for the end user. All right, so let's go back to our slides. Thank you, Jeroen. So we talked about the page redesign. Let's focus on some other points. Can you see all see my slides again?
We do.
Okay, good. So we already supported account lists. We now also support account views, so my accounts, as filter criteria. So besides having access
in
to
presentation mode, Michelle, because it's rather small.
Yes, sorry. That better?
It is.
Good. So we support not only account lists, but also my accounts, the account views, for filtering your list of accounts to get to that subset of targets. And this basically just adds flexibility for defining your targets and gives you more options to get to that exact list. And this is particularly important if you need to set up cycles for a lot of targets for a lot of cycle plans. For example, if you have 150, 200 cycle plans to set targets and goals for, you may want to prefer working from an account list or a view. And now that we've extended the limit to 10,000 accounts per list and view, it basically covers all your needs, even complex business criteria can be covered either by the filters, and if not by the filters, then at least by the lists and views. So we wanted to add more flexibility with the views and also extending that from 4,000 to 10,000, and the performance is still perfectly fine. So we're happy with that new feature. We talked about cloning already a little bit. So cloning is the feature where you simply make a copy of a cycle with all the channels and products and all the cycle plans included. And if those cycle plans have targets and goals, they will be included in the clone as well. So this is a super fast solution for preparing, for example, monthly cycles where you don't have a lot of changes in the data. But for some of our customers that use TSF MyTarget, if a customer would no longer be flagged as TSF MyTarget and you would make a clone of a previous cycle, it would still be included as a target, which is not what we want. And therefore, we've introduced the option to tick this box, exclude non-TSF MyTargets. And what it will do is before creating or executing that clone, it will check if there's any target that no longer has the TSF MyTarget flag on the account, on the TSF. So anybody where the flag was removed will also not be included in the clone. So this is, again, saving a lot of time because now the cloning becomes more attractive if you can exclude accounts that you don't want in your cycle plans anymore. And of course, we talked about the templates and the set standard goals. So if you want to make sure that anybody that now does have a flag that didn't have it before, you can basically do the combination of first cloning, excluding non-TSF MyTarget, then running the set standard goals with the template, skip all duplicates, and you're there. You have an updated cycle and cycle plans that exclude anybody that's no longer a target and includes everybody that now is a target. So this, again, is all about time savings, avoiding having to go through the whole process by the local admin or the key user. Target deletion, we also improved that, where if a user deletes a target from a cycle plan, it will also delete the channel goals and the product goals for that target. And there's a button to recalculate the goals for the cycle plan instantly. So you also have the updated numbers there straight away. And this is all about quality. So to reduce risk of errors where maybe an end user deletes a target but doesn't delete the channel goals and the product goals. So this is just to make the process even more easy. Of course, there's also the option to set goals to 0, both online and on the iPad. But if the business process is ready to delete the target, then that's also possible now. Any questions on that? All right, then let's move on to the biggest impact and what is going to give a lot of flexibility in deployment of the app. We now have introduced an MCCP FastTrack admin page where you can configure country-specific settings, and you can configure all the filters, all the columns, set filters as favorites, and hide sections, and switch on off features, basically. So this is the big change where basically we're answering the needs from multiple of our customers where they have MCCP FastTrack deployed, but if countries would use their local custom fields as filters, with the previous release, those filters would still be visible on the page also for users from other countries, because we didn't allow for localization. With this release, you can configure specific settings for a country or a group of countries, Nordics, for example, or Benelux, and you can easily configure all the filter criteria and features on the page. So we'll just walk you through that. So it's an extra tab that is available either to the system admin and can also be made available to the local admin. And it basically comes with a default page that is applicable for any country or group of countries that you add later on. And it allows for country-specific pages, settings and page layouts. For example, you have a default for the entire org, but you have a group Nordics where you can set additional filters, for example, or additional custom metadata types, the flags that we used to work from. So you can really play with what's available for all the countries or what's specific to a group of countries or a country. And this just adds a lot of flexibility configuration-wise and meeting the needs of the different countries. We no longer have a mix of custom fields on the page, some for France, some for Germany, as an example, or we had the case where all the filters were for a country, so other countries were kind of forced to work from the account lists. That's no longer necessary. You can simply define the settings per country and really tailor to the needs of the country. It's also important because, for example, team-based goals might be used in some countries, others not. If you activated it in the previous release, it would always show on the Add New Target page and on the Set Standard Goals page. So if a country wouldn't use team-based goals, it's quite confusing for the end user. Now you can basically switch it on or off by country. So it also allows to set your filters, settings on off on the default or on the country page. So for example, what we used to manage with the custom metadata types, you can now switch on if you, for example, work with team-based goals. This would apply in the default setting to all the countries in the org. You can define if, for example, for set standard goals, if the targets should be distributed based on only the territory or also the TSF and the TSF MyTarget. So basically defines the org-wide settings in terms of what features and business rules need to be adhered to for MCCP FastTrack. You can also configure the filters either for the default, so available to all the countries, or on a country-specific level, both on the account object and the product metrics object. You can identify the order of appearance of the filters, so which should be shown on top. You can identify which is a favorite or not, so available in the More link. And the same for the resulted columns. And you can also decide if you want the account lists and my accounts views to be available, yes or no, to show it or to collapse it. And also important is that we support setting initial values and the creation of a cycle and a cycle plan. So through this admin tab, you can identify that, for example, certain fields should always be auto-populate with a certain value when a cycle or cycle plan is created. So you can set it up already for the org or specific countries. So if you have specific fields relevant to your business that need to be completed, that may be on the page layout of the Veeva MC Cycle plan, but not necessarily in the app, now you can set it through the admin tab. Yes, so I'll just walk you through that in the sandbox, but basically the user experience has increased significantly because you can really tailor the filter criteria and the settings to the local needs and the local business process. With the admin tab, it's also much easier to maintain the configuration yourself. You can adapt to whatever change in business and changing needs straight away. You don't need support from Trueson. We can train you on how to run the admin tab. And you no longer have a single setting for all users and countries. So that's a big improvement, and it adds a lot of flexibility. Any questions on that before we show you in the application? Okay, just a sec. Can you see my sandbox? I guess, yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, so the MCCP FastTrack admin tab, this one, you can make it available to system admins or to local admins, and walk you through the configuration changes for that, the permission sets. But basically the tab comes with 3 sections. One is page layout, one is groups, one is settings. So I'll just show you this example where we have a default for the entire org, and we have a France specific setting, and we have a Nordics specific setting. So in the default, you set basically the parameters for the entire org. So in this case, all the business works with TSF MyTarget, and we've switched on the data template. We've switched on to exclude non-targets in cycle clone to have that option on the page. But we kept team-based goals switched off because not all the countries work with team-based goals. We also have a number of custom filters identified. So these would be available to all the countries using the app. For example, a few fields on the account object or on the product metrics object. We set the order for the fields and we identified a few as favorite. So the others will be available under the More link. We have resulted columns and init values. So this means that for any cycle being created, the activate edited goals would be automatically ticked. And we can also set, for example, goal editing rules to enable editing goals to 0 on iPad. We also have the overreached and underreached threshold. We have auto-populated percentages for these fields. And we have the status, we auto-populate it to planned. So this you can set on the default page available to all the countries. And then if you look, for example, at the France-specific setting, we see that team-based goals is now activated. So this is added to the default settings. They merge, and they have an extra custom filter on the account that they want to see as a favorite, and they have an extra column. And they have their own page layout where, for example, they decide not to show the account lists and account views. And the same for Nordics. Nordics is not using team-based goal, but they do have an extra filter field. And that's basically the only change they have. So this is easy to configure, and I'll just show you how easy. Let's add, for example, Benelux. A specific setting for Benelux. So I start with the page layout. And I rename it. I'm fine with these settings. Then I need to define the group. So what is Benelux? So I name it. I add my countries. Belgium. Luxembourg. And can't even find my own country. Yeah, Netherlands. So we've defined a group of countries. Okay, done. Let's go back. And now in settings, we can add the specific settings for Benelux. So we already had the default. We had France, we had Nordics, and now we add Benelux to that. Let's rename it Benelux. Benelux is a country group, so either it's a country like France or a country group. And the group is, why is my Benelux not here? What did I do wrong?
Hi, Michelle, you forgot to save that settings.
On
you just
the
clicked on OK.
Oh, bummers. Sorry. Thank you, Priya.
Welcome.
Sorry, I'll have to do that again. Okay, sorry for the detour. I click OK. I click save.
Save it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the thing is, you need to reload the page because you already created a specific setting and it's blank. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's basically what I would have to do is remove it here.
Right. Or you can assign a country group temporarily and then save Benelux and then go back and change the country group.
Yes, sorry for that, guys. This is all new. So I can now assign it to Nordics and then switch it to Benelux later.
That's right.
Okay.
Just make the country specific setting valid for saving.
Yeah. All right, let's assume this where Benelux, I can say, okay, Benelux are using team-based goals and maybe they have an extra custom filter. For example, on the account object, they want to use the field key opinion leader, for example. and save it. So now it's deploying the metadata. We can also preview basically how that would look like, all the different merged settings for the default, for France, for Nordics, and then for Benelux. It would inherit the settings from the default, plus the team-based goal that we just assigned, plus the extra custom filter that we just set. And that's it. Please just ignore that I did something wrong on the group creation. So any questions on that whilst I fix this? That's clear?
Yep, everything clear.
All right.
So
Okay, good. Then let's go back to the slides. And because I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions on how are we gonna configure that ourselves and how does that work? So let's talk about that. All good, large enough, Jeroen?
yes, for the elderly people amongst us, it's all fine.
Good. So we renamed some of the permission sets that come with the package. We used to call them MCCP admin, which could be quite confusing if you have like tens or hundreds of permission sets, of which others could also be named similarly. So we renamed them. We have a new permission set to work with that admin tab. We also have new custom metadata type, and we have a setting required for configuration for now. So let's walk you through that. Renaming of permission sets, there's no action on your side. It's just to update the SOPs that these are now named MCCP FastTrack admin or sales rep or sales manager. The permission set to configure on the admin tab is MCCP FastTrack configurator, and it should be assigned to a system administrator. Custom metadata type is added to Trueson property, and this should be added to all custom permission sets related to the app. So the naming could be different in your org, but this custom metadata type is to be added. Oh, sorry. And basically for supporting goal editing to 0 on iPad, there is some CRUD settings to be done on the cycle object for the administrator and the sales rep. So this is all documented in the release notes, but just to remind you, when you install, there's a few things to be done this time. As you can imagine, your current configuration, you probably want to update it to the admin tab as soon as possible. So to do that, there's a few things required. Firstly, to be able to work with the admin tab, you need to set Apex setting deploy metadata from non-certified package versions via Apex. And once you're done, you can switch it off. And we're looking into a more robust solution for this. But for now, this is how to enable configuration on the app, on the tab for admin. Hence, as usual, we recommend to only do this in configuration and then migrate the settings, the changes to production. So switch this feature on, and then once completed, switch it off. And if you prefer that your local admin manages the admin tab, what you need to do is make a clone of the permission set, rename it, and assign these system permissions to the permission set and assign that to your local admin. And of course, this Apex setting is still required. So this is what needs to be done. So how does that work? So contrary to Veeva releases, Veeva CRM releases, we will not push it to your sandboxes because you will have to look into the planning. You can install it and configure and test it on your own pace, but please do it as soon as possible because there's so many enhancements and it adds so much improvements for the end user that you really want to deploy it as soon as possible. So I will share this all with you, and it's also included in the release notes. So the installation links are here. So remember, once you've installed it, update those permission sets with the new settings and update your current configuration on the new admin tab. So remember, the current configuration is in custom metadata types. So either there's a function to import legacy settings. You can only import it when the admin page is still empty, unconfigured. Then you can import your settings, but they will import to the default page. So if you want to have different settings for your countries, I recommend to just leave the default page as lean as possible and manage it all in the country or group specific settings. And once you've set up your admin tab, you can just delete the custom metadata types through setup. They're not duplicates. You can just remove them because they're no longer applicable. And that's really the process. So we do encourage all customers to discuss with us how to approach that configuration update. If you want us to update your configuration, or if you want to take the opportunity to reassess the business needs in the countries and define those country-specific settings, because now you have the flexibility to really listen to their needs and give them their own specific setup. And I think that's the most important that we want to share with you. Again, checking if there's any questions. I guess no questions is good. Then can I ask for your feedback? If you like the changes, if you're now panicking a little bit because of the configuration that you need to do.
I think especially for LATAM, the new features are very valuable because in LATAM we have these monthly cycle plans. And so this cloning, but excluding the non-targeted, and then later have a possibility to add the additional new targeted, that's really a great feature. So I see really that the processes will be quite easy for the LATAM back office people. So this was really a good enhancement. Highly appreciated.
Good, perfect. Thank you, Ursula. Okay, then I think we can conclude the session. We'll share the slides, the recording, and the release notes afterwards. So let me know if you want to have the recording. The release notes will be shared with the customers. So thank you.
Recording is always appreciated.
Yes, I'll share that, Ursula. All right, good. Thank you for attending. And if you have any questions afterwards, just reach out to me. We'll be happy to discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.